You're listening to The Greeks Gridiron. Now here's your host, Ethan Haristadoulou.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to The Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Haristadoulou, and it's that time again, Tuesday morning, to dive into some power rankings, this time following week number 5 of the NFL. If you're currently watching and not just listening, up on the screen here, you can take a look at last week's power rankings, and now we'll go ahead, as we always do. We will wipe the slate clean, work our way from the bottom all the way up to the top, and discuss all this past weekend's games, kind of sharing my thoughts. I invite you all to do the same in the comments section down below. Want to hear from you all. Where would you rank these teams? Thoughts and opinions on my rankings, fire away in that comment section. But starting, of course, as we always do, with the number 1 overall pick Contenders. At the very bottom of the league to kick off this group at 32 is, of course, the 1-4 New England Patriots. At 31, the Tennessee Titans did not play this past week. At number 30, we're looking at the Cleveland Browns. At number 29, the Carolina Panthers. At 28, we have the LA Rams. And then number 27, to round out the group at the top, you're looking at the Jacksonville Jaguars, who notched their first victory this week. The Patriots, I cannot stress this enough, have got to be one of the most painful teams to watch, because even when they have things going right for them, they find ways to blow their opportunities and not get the job done. To see them get this close twice in what was like the last 3 or so minutes of that game against the Dolphins and ultimately not come away with a victory makes absolutely no sense. On top of that, you have a situation where you're getting 3 different breaks on special teams, whether it was a botched snap, field goal, missed field goal. What else did you have? You had the blocked punt on top of that. And then for whatever reason, you're avoiding the rushing game, even though you're averaging 8 yards per attempt and you doubled up on the passing to rushing attempts. Like, this entire situation offensively did not really make sense to me. Your defense obviously held on for the bulk majority of the game and ultimately finally breaks late once your offense has just been flopping around like a dead fish. I can't believe the Patriots are where they are. You also now have to deal with the fallout of the Jabril Peppers arrest. Thank God you at least have a guy like Christian Gonzalez on the defense and what he can do, and be proud of that, because there is not a lot to be excited about in New England, and now the calls are getting even louder for Drake May. I have been on the wagon of just let the guy sit. This is a lost season. It's not even worth it, in my opinion. Others would, of course, think, well, get the young guy in there, get him reps, get him the time to play. Wherever you stand on that fence right now, I think we can all agree that bringing in Drake May at this point in the season, whether you agree or disagree, I don't really think changes much for this team, because there's a lot more wrong than just quarterback, than just offensive line. I think it goes even deeper than that. The Patriots are a mess at number 32. I've got a lot to say about them, but we'll wrap up there. I don't want to spend too much time on them, but my goodness, just what a showing from New England this week. At 31, like I said, Tennessee did not play. They're sitting at 1-3. Their one victory being over that hapless Dolphins team we just saw knock out the Patriots. So, sitting at 31 there. The Browns at 1-4. The one thing that I got from that game walking away, and I think it kind of sums up where this current season is and where it is going right now, is the sight of Deshaun Watson walking off the field, and you can see he and Kevin Stefanski kind of having like this distanced back and forth as he's trying to avoid a 12 men on the field penalty. It just captures the discombobulated and just awful situation that is brewing in Cleveland right now. It feels like a flat out mess, and I don't even really know where to start with everything that's going wrong. But at this point now, Cleveland's probably going to win a handful more games. You know, they might get another 2-3 wins, but that's probably where I'm going to put their ceiling right now. They are playing no better than a 4-win team at this very stage of the season. Obviously, things could change, but my goodness, is it ugly in Cleveland right now. The Panthers, you could walk away from this game at this point now, and after having Bryce Young get benched for the last few weeks, you could probably question, was it really Bryce Young all along? Did Andy Dalton just kind of get, what happens sometimes when a quarterback gets benched and another guy takes over and a team gets like that jolt of lightning for a week or two? That seems to be fading away, as obviously we saw Bryce Young come back in and get an opportunity to play some snaps as well. I mean, there's not really a lot going well for them, especially on the defensive side of things. It feels like the Panthers are just literally letting teams score at this point. It's kind of crazy. The defense has been really bad. You just let up 36 points to Chicago of all teams. It's not like their offense has really been lighting teams up so far this season. You could walk away at least knowing Chuba Hubbard is looking pretty good. He's strung together 3 really solid games right now, but he's about the best you've got going for you right now in what has been, again, another steaming pile of poo. There's a lot of ugly going on in this bottom tier of teams right now, where every single team on my list for this bottom group is sitting at just 1 win. And, the Panthers personify what I would consider a number 1 overall pick contender at this point. The Rams sitting at 28 at 1-4. The reality for them is that until this team can just get healthy and get their guys back, there's not really much you can do. This will be a team that, with a really good head coach, you have a franchise quarterback in Matthew Stafford, you're able to compete. And the defense has not been terrible by any means. It's not been great. It's not been terrible. Somewhere in the middle, maybe slightly below average, maybe even at times slightly above, depending on the week and the matchup. But I will say that until this team gets healthy and this offense can actually run at the level it was meant to, with offensive linemen still out, with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp still out, you are not, and even defenses now, or injuries on the defensive side of things that's starting to affect them as well. This team, with how close they've kept in some games, and this past week being a prime example of that against a 3-2 now Green Bay Packers team, you have to wonder what this team could actually look like if they just weren't dealt the injury bug on a level that you don't really get too often, just coming right out of the gates to start the season. But unfortunately, the Rams are where they are at 1-4, sitting at number 28. I don't want to make excuses for them, but it's a really tough situation right now, and you have to wonder what this team would look like if they were even just slightly more healthy than where they are currently. The Jaguars taking 37 points to take down their division rival in their throwback uniforms that they had not worn since 2008. The Jaguars looked good. I'm a big fan of their old logo. I think it just has a much meaner, more intense type of look to it, so I'm a big fan of it, and they got the win in those uniforms as well. You got the best game from Trevor Lawrence that I think he has had in, I don't want to say his career, but I mean, you had a really strong showing from Trevor Lawrence for the first time in a very, very long time, throwing for 371 yards, a couple of touchdowns, an 82% completion percentage. On top of that, your running back Tank Bigsby had himself a really good game, couple of scores on the ground, one of them being that 65-yard scamper to help put yourself in position to win this football game. While the defensive effort was nearly non-existent beyond Trayvon Walker racking up 3 sacks in the game, you did what you had to do, and that was stop what was I don't even want to say a skid. It was like a tumble down a mountain with an 0-4 start that you were potentially staring down, blowing a win and staring at a 0-5 start. You were able to hold Indy off late, get that final score to put the game away, and thankfully you finally have a win. There's no more winless teams in the NFL, and you don't have to worry about a big fat goose egg in the win column anymore. So tipping my cap to the Jacksonville Jaguars for getting the job done this week. Moving into the struggle bus category, those teams that probably not picking number 1, maybe not anywhere between 1 and 5, but you're probably picking somewhere within that top 10 or so category. And at the bottom, we're looking at the Dolphins at 26, the Raiders at 25, the Giants at 24, the Bengals at 23, and then the Colts rounding out the top of this group at number 22. Those Dolphins sitting at 2-3 now. Again, big victory despite what felt like your team giving the Patriots every single opportunity and then some to take that football game and steal it from you. You get the job done. You make it through what was like 3 different special teams gaffes. You had the high snap that knocked you out of field goal range. You have Devon Achane who went down with an injury. This team cannot wait to get Tua back. I'm really looking forward to his return. Regardless of what anyone may feel about what Tua should do with his health, it is ultimately his decision, and it's clear that this offense needs Tua to be the one orchestrating it from the quarterback spot because they have been suffering without him. And I think that this Dolphins team getting a win here with his return much sooner rather than later, I would assume at this point now, probably feels pretty good. We'll see where Miami goes right now. They are hanging on for dear life, though, minus Tua at this point here. He's got to come back for him. At number 25, the Raiders. I think the big thing that you're walking away from with this game here is just it's the quarterback. And this is something that I talked about this team coming into the season, and it has not really resolved itself to this point here. You now, of course, have the conversation with Devontae Adams departing as well and who he's going to be traded to, but it sounds like while it has yet to be determined who he's going to, it's pretty much a done deal that he's going to be traded to this point, unofficially at this point. But with Minshew having a couple of interceptions, Aiden O'Connell comes in to relief, and he ends up throwing a pick as well. Antonio Pierce has been talking about not being committal to either one of the quarterbacks and what he's going to do for the starter going forward, but you wonder if a change is even going to really do anything, and it's unfortunate because the defense is the strength of this team, and I said that a lot coming into the season as well, and they're even suffering from all these turnovers at this point and just the lack of production from the offensive side of things. I mean, hell, you let a Broncos team that was struggling to find any sort of success on offense have the game that they did. I mean, It again, I'm not going to point fingers at the defense here. Your offense put you in some really bad spots, but for Denver to walk away with what was it, like 36 points that they put up in that matchup, you have to wonder where you go from here as a Raiders fan and as a Raiders team as a whole, because it is not looking good to this point here. The Giants at 24, also sitting at 2-3. No Malik Neighbors, no problem. You have a guy like running back Tyrone Tracy racking up just under 130 yards on the ground. Daniel Jones having what was probably one of the more efficient games that he's had in quite some time. Over 250 yards passing. He has a couple of touchdowns on top of that. And to go along with that all, one hell of a defensive performance here. You're getting 18 pressures, 10 quarterback hits. You're looking at 7 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, 7 total pass breakups on the day. That Giants defense came to play and play hard, and it was incredible watching them play the way they did. That is, while not exactly what I was anticipating from this Giants defense coming into the season out of the gates, I expected something similar to that, a far more aggressive, disruptive type of unit. If this defense turned a corner this week, the Giants could be a threat, especially once Malik Neighbors is back in the fold, which I'm assuming maybe no more than a week this week off that he got. He should be back in as well. If we can get more of that from the defense, you have yourself a legitimate shot to compete in this league here. So we'll keep an eye on the Giants for now. They're still on the struggle bus. Things have not been great by any means, but that effort we saw from the defense this week against the Seahawks team that's been dumping some points on opponents when they've had the opportunity, even as recently as just this past week against the Lions, or the week prior rather. I mean, who knows where this Giants team could go, because the NFC East is in a bit of flux right now. It's not very far apart with the way the records are. Obviously, the Commanders looking really good at 4-1, but I mean, the Cowboys are only 3-2. You're one game behind them at 2-3 now. Season's certainly not over for the NFC East nor these New York Giants. The Bengals at 1-4, sitting at number 23 here, sitting above 3 teams that have one more win than they do at this point here. I am giving them some benefit of the doubt because of obviously the strength of their schedule, the opponents that they've been playing, and how tight they have played their opponents in those losses. It's unfortunate that Cincinnati is where they are. I mean, you have even your quarterback saying, this is not a championship level team the way that they are playing right now, but the offense is a championship level offense if this is the way it's supposed to look here, and they finally figured it out there. I mean, you're looking at Joe Burrow, 5 touchdowns, 400 yards passing. You're getting 4 touchdowns between the 2 top guys in T. Higgins and Jamar Chase here. But the defense, and this is something I've been bringing up the last few weeks because it has looked worse and worse as every single week has gone by. You allow 520 total yards of offense and, of course, 41 points going through overtime here. You literally had the chance to win the game in the bag, and you could not get it done. Special teams gaff. You missed the field goal left, and it's just one of those things where it's like the Bengals can't get out of their own way right now, but also the defense just is a sand sieve at this point, and I don't really see how the Bengals find a way to win if you're putting up 38 points and cannot get the job done. They've got to figure something out defensively. I'm not really worried about the offense at this point here. They started out slow as they have in years past, and honestly, the last what feels like every single season that Joe Burrow has basically started the year with them. And again, they pick it back up. We're now 5 games into the season. The offense is clearly clicking, but the defense is just in a way that I don't think anyone really anticipated here. Like, I had had the Bengals defense as the worst ranked defense in the AFC North, but I didn't think it was going to be like this. So we'll see what happens with them defensively, but it has been a nightmare over there in just about every facet of defensive play. And then the Colts rounding out the group at number 22 here. I don't really how do I say this without it coming off like I'm being serious about it, because it's not, but it definitely is something that I think is worth mentioning even in the slightest here. But there is like the potential quarterback controversy thing going on right now. You have people already asking about the future and what it looks like with Joe Flacco playing the way he is and Anthony Richardson right now. I mean, this offense with Joe Flacco under center has been wildly efficient. Joe Flacco going for 350 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He had that bomb to Alec Pierce, who, shout out to him, man. He keeps coming up with some huge plays for this offense this season here. I mean, again, Shane Steichen making it very clear that Anthony Richardson is the guy. And I mean, you spent a number 4 overall selection on him. I'm not surprised. Like, this is how it's going to go. This is how this works here. But it must be very difficult to come away from the games that you've had from Joe Flacco now and not look at the film and go, damn, this is crazy how good this offense has looked. And this is without Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor wasn't even out there. Could you imagine if he was out there for this matchup? Who knows what this offense could have actually done? Like, they weren't even at their fullest potential. Defensively, I'm kind of over the Gus Bradley defense, the rush 4, drop everyone else back into coverage. Our guys will beat your guys kind of stuff. It works when everyone's healthy, but in the NFL, nobody is always healthy like that. And this was a prime example of how you're dealing with a lot of injuries defensively. And this right here, this game against the Jacksonville Jaguars team that was having a hard time even getting near 20 points scored in a game, was able to dump 37 points on you. Obviously, Dallas Flowers, he gets cut this week now following that game here, kind of like a casualty of the way this game looked in that. I'm not a fan of it. I'm kind of over it, and I've been kind of over it for a while now. So obviously this isn't, I'm going to call it like the nail in the coffin for him, but at some point we need to start looking at what's going on defensively and getting a little bit more creative, because the whole rush 4 drop 7 thing is just really, it's getting old for me. It really is. Moving into the Jeff Fisher category, though, those teams that are flirting with a playoff spot, but just on the outside looking in my opinion here. Sitting at number 21, we have the 3-2 Chicago Bears, and I'm sure that might ring a few bells. We'll talk about that in a second. The Cardinals at number 20, the Jets at 19, the Saints at 18, the 49ers at 17, getting knocked back out of the playoff hopefuls after finding their way back in last week. We have the Eagles at 16, obviously didn't play this week, and then the Packers rounding out the group at the top there at number 15. So with Chicago at 3-2, I will say that my biggest takeaway right now is that it feels like Caleb Williams might be starting to put it together. And yes, Carolina Panthers as the opponent being considered here. This was by far the best game that he's had, in my opinion. 300 yards, couple of touchdowns, nearly 70% completion percentage here. He feels like he's finally starting to piece it all together and get comfortable with what he needs to do in this offense here for Chicago to be successful. The offensive line is obviously still not perfect here. He's still getting pressured. He's still getting sacked, but it feels like since like the back half of the game against the Colts a few weeks ago, it feels like Caleb Williams is really starting to put it together. There's kind of an emphasis on the passing game being a little bit quicker, and that's what I feel like he needed. And it feels like the adjustments they've made are really starting to pay off. And the more comfortable he gets, the further and further along he's obviously going to progress, but the closer he gets to that ceiling potential that everyone in Chicago and honestly around the league loved about him coming out of college. Defensively, I mean, Chicago continues to do what Chicago does defensively. They're a fantastic unit. I mean, aside from Chuba Hubbard getting some licks in on them, it really was not like a performance I would sit here and say wasn't great. It was a great performance by Chicago. They did a great job, and I mean, if the defense can continue to hold like that, and again, Caleb Williams continues to progress the way he is, this is a team that's going to be battling for a playoff spot. But I have them at 3-2 simply because of the wins that they currently have right now are not against the best teams in the league. I believe they have a combined 3 wins altogether between the teams that they have beaten to this point here. I just want to see Chicago go up against like a more talented team and get the job done. That's kind of where I currently stand on Chicago right now. Let me see them in some competitive contests against more like playoff contender, more highly touted opponents here, and I'll feel a lot better about them. The Cardinals at number 20, big win for them. It was a grind, but you can't walk away from this game and not be impressed with not only what Kyler Murray was doing, especially with his legs late throughout the game, but his performance late in the game. And then, of course, James Conner as well. James Conner, who is one of those guys who just feels so underrated and so underappreciated because he's in Arizona and the situation that Arizona has been in the last handful of years now. But the way those two guys basically took this Arizona Cardinals team on their back and carried them to a victory on those final two scoring drives is something that you really need to write home about. It was extremely impressive, and none for nothing. You went into this game, and I personally, and I know a lot of people, did not give Arizona any type of chance, any type of shot at all. Like they had no business coming into this game in San Francisco on top of that and come out with the victory, especially with how they got their butts kicked the week prior against Washington. There's no reason that this was supposed to be the end result of this matchup here. But sure enough, Arizona, the NFC West, with the way those games can be, that division is so wonky with how results happen with some of the games. And I'm not really surprised. And I think I even said that in my prediction. Like I picked 49ers to win, obviously, as did most people. But I'm sure plenty of people expected a runaway game, but I even mentioned I would not be shocked if Arizona kept it close. I didn't say anything about them pulling off a win here, but I figured they would probably give the 49ers a good game. I just didn't expect them to pull off the win, but I'm not shocked that it turned out this way. I expected a fight from Arizona. They were not just going to go down without a fight, and they fought harder than I think anyone could have imagined. The Jets at 2-3. Offensive rhythm continues to be off, and it's a London game, so I mean, I get it, but it was not good. Aaron Rodgers, 3 interceptions, just really interesting decision making. Whether it was miscommunication between he and the guys that he was throwing to, I'm not necessarily sure. It's really weird with Aaron Rodgers and when he has those bad games, because you're so used to just how on point he is with everything. And a lot of Aaron Rodgers, or the offenses that Aaron Rodgers has run in his career, especially in the later parts of his career, are all about timing and execution of routes, and you know, he and the receivers being on the same page. And it almost, I don't want to blame receivers for interceptions Rodgers throws. That's not what I'm trying to do here, but it almost feels a lot of the time when you see things like that happen, there's clearly something that was like someone was not on the same page, whether it was Rodgers or the receiver, and that happens a lot because timing is everything with the way Rodgers does stuff. On top of that, the team could not run the football. You had 36 yards on the ground for a measly 2.6 yards per attempt. The defense was obviously money, and not really surprised. Defenses tend to win out, especially in the London games. But I mean, the Jets have a good defense regardless of that. I mean, you look at 4 sacks, 6 tackles for loss. Minnesota's offense was 4 of 13 on third down. It was just Aaron Rodgers turnover after turnover after turnover that was really killing the team here, and just some drives that were flat out stalling out too. So tough look for the Jets right now, sitting in a really bad spot at 2-3. Finally decided to kick them out of the playoff hopefuls here, but we'll see what happens with them. AFC East very much wide open, as the Bills are sitting at 3-2. You're at 2-3, and then both the other two Miami's at 2-3, and then the Patriots are at 1-4. Very much open in the AFC East. Not all is dead, but right now, the way things look, the AFC East is a far closer division than I think anyone anticipated it being. Saints at number 18. Hard-fought loss to the Kansas City Chiefs here, but one thing that really stood out to me is just the offensive line injuries that seem to really be weighing on them. Missing Shane Lemieux, Cesar Ruiz. I mean, you're in a spot right now, and then of course, obviously Eric McCoy, who's been out for a couple of weeks now. You're so thin on the interior of your offensive line. This is affecting what was by far the biggest strength you had coming out of the gates this season, with the way you were trampling over opponents on the ground and you were dumping 40 points on people per week. I mean, it is what it is. I didn't expect a drop-off this serious, but it feels like the injuries are just starting to mount on the offensive line, and it's putting them in a really tough spot. I mean, you could tell Derek Carr struggling with some stuff. He had a really bad interception too, like just a layup that he threw to Cook. It was just a discombobulated effort, I guess you could say, offensively. I mean, you're looking at 35 yards on the ground from your running backs, and the defense wasn't bad. I mean, it's not like you got blown out of the water in this game here. You lose, 26-13? I mean, it wasn't like you held the Chiefs' offense to 4 field goals despite your offense really not doing a ton. And I mean, one of the touchdowns you let up is immediately after you have that interception to kind of, blow things open right at the beginning of the football game here. You take that touchdown away, and it's basically one touchdown that the defense let up. So So overall, it was a solid performance defensively. The offense clearly hurting with all the injuries on the offensive line, and now Derek Carr he got taken out at the end of the game here. Who knows what happens at this point, but Saints are in a really tough spot right now. The good news is, again, like I said with the Jets, you're 2-3, but the Falcons and the Buccaneers, both 3-2, you're definitely not out of it by any means, but health is a concern right now, especially on this O-line. 49ers at 2-3. Man, I mean, just a big sigh. I don't know how you could really... Did anyone see something like this coming? And losses the way that they've had them too. I mean, this team misses Christian McCaffrey late in those games to help put things away, absolutely, without a doubt. But I mean, even Brock Purdy having not a great game, interception during what was it? I forget what quarter it was in. But I mean, you had the interception earlier in the game, and then obviously you have the comeback opportunity, and he throws that pick. So a couple just not of the norm for Brock Purdy, and just how on the money he typically is. The defense just having a really hard time, obviously, especially late with James Conner, but Kyler Murray on the ground just ripping runs. I think he averaged like 12 yards per attempt or 13 yards per attempt every time he took off with the football. And James Conner, who shows no signs of slowing down despite the age that he's at currently. I don't really know where to go with this 49ers team right now, because you have, a convincing win over the Jets from the beginning of the season, but you have 3 losses now to this point, and I mean, your only other wins, a really like a stomping of the New England Patriots, and what is that win even worth considering the state that the Patriots are in right now? The 49ers are in some deep trouble, and I thought I overreacted a couple of weeks ago, kicking them down to 20, and maybe that even was a bit of an overreaction at the time, but I mean, sitting at 2-3 now, and you're dropping games to the Arizona Cardinals, I mean, I don't really know what to make of this 49ers team at this point here. They have got some soul searching to do. You finally got a solid effort from Brandon Ayuk this week, but a little bit of a mess right now. That spark, that magic is missing, and maybe it is just Christian McCaffrey. I don't know. You're dealing with some defensive injuries as well. Like Drake Greenlaw hasn't even come back. He obviously got knocked out during the Super Bowl last year. You're still waiting for him to come back. Just how healthy is Fred Warner after he got hurt last week but ended up playing? So there's just a lot that you can look at with the defense right now as well, and maybe point your finger to, but I don't know what's going on with this 49ers team, but they have got to figure it out. Eagles will sit at number 16 here. They did technically, I believe, drop a spot, if I'm remembering correctly. I don't have my rankings from last week sent up on here, but either they dropped just a singular spot or they are sitting where they were last week. I can't remember off the top of my head, but they stay sitting in a good spot right in the middle of the league at 2-2. And then the Packers sitting at 3-2, just on the outside looking in. Jordan Love had himself a Will Levis-esque pick 6, one of the, wackier interceptions that we've seen, poor decision throw kind of deal. Obviously, I get he's trying to avoid the safety, but they're just one of those plays that you wish he could have maybe gotten the ball out a little bit sooner than he did to avoid what was that kind of disaster of a pick. He had a couple of nice touchdowns, though, to Tucker Kraft, the tight end. Offense is really balanced right now, and I think that's good for Green Bay. I think them discovering their run game will ultimately help them in the long run here, as Jordan Love continues to kind of knock off the rust from the time that he missed. Defense looked pretty solid. You had pressure on Matthew Stafford for about a third of his 48 dropbacks that he had. You did allow about 4.8 yards per attempt on the ground, so that is something to look at here. I feel like the Packers defense is leaky at times, and sometimes against the pass, sometimes against the run, sometimes a little bit of both here, but bend don't break. It can get you wins, and in this case it did, winning 24-19 over the Los Angeles Rams here, but a game you probably felt was a little bit too close for comfort considering the state that the Rams are currently in right now, if you catch my drift on that one. Moving into the playoff hopefuls now, and as a reminder, because I feel like this is something I need to point out every single time we get to this point here, there must be 7 AFC and 7 NFC teams in this grouping here. I have to have a division winner from each division, obviously, and then from there, littered in are the remaining teams from each conference that would wind out being 5, 6, and 7 for the seeds of their respective conferences. So just keep that in mind when we're doing this here. It's an interesting way to do power rankings, but it leads to some fun conversation. So Playoff hopefuls at number 14, we are looking at the 3-2 Denver Broncos on a 3-game heater right now. At number 13, the Chargers. We'll talk about that in a second. Obviously did not play this week. The Seahawks at 3-2, sitting at number 12. The Steelers at 11. The Cowboys at 10. The Bills at 9. The Buccaneers at 8. The Falcons at 7. And then the Washington Commanders rounding out the group at number 6. And I'm sure that's going to spark some conversation. I'll get to it in a second here, but from the bottom up, the Broncos at 3-2 right now. No surprise that Bo Nix had the best game that he's had so far this season, because when Bo Nix is not under pressure, he's actually a very good quarterback. It's when that pressure gets heavy that you can kind of see the wheel spinning a little too quickly for it. You could tell that he doesn't look the way he does when he's not under pressure. It's like two totally different quarterbacks, and the numbers even reflect that too if you look at them. But on top of that, it's what this defense is doing, especially during this 3-game win streak they've had going here. They are currently sitting on the 5th lowest yards per game allowed in passing so far this season. They also have the 4th highest pressure rate in the league. On top of that, they're near the top of the league in sacks as well. This defensive front over in Denver, coupled with just how good the secondary has been, the linebacking room, this team on the defensive side of things will be a big reason why this team is fighting for potentially maybe like a number 7 or a number 6 seed here. I don't anticipate the Denver Broncos going on some monster, AFC West winning type of run, especially now with the Kansas City Chiefs sitting at 5-0 looking pretty good here. But the Broncos are putting it together week by week. The run game's quite not where it needs to be still, but I mean, if the O-line can just protect Bo Nix and this defense continues to play the way they are, Denver was in this spot a handful of years ago. I would say it was like maybe 2, maybe 3 years ago, pretty much like right around when I started doing this, not too long ago, or not too long after that. But Denver has had these stints of really good defenses where the offense just quite can't catch up. If this offense can just be efficient, take care of the football, they're in that position again where they have a defense that is absolutely nails, and they have a head coach that can devise an offensive scheme to help take care of the offensive side to protect that football here. But I like where Denver is right now. I think as far as the number 7 seed goes, and even like the number 6 seed in the AFC, there's probably a lot of debate and conversation you could have. There are probably some people who would still defend the Jets at 2 and 3, even though they are kind of in the state that they are in. But I think when you look at like the number 6 and number 7 seeds of the AFC side of things, a little bit wide open with how it looks. Chargers sitting at 2-2. Obviously did not play this week. This is one of those benefit of the doubt type of deals for me. They started out so good at 2-0, and then the injuries really caught up with them those last 2 games they played. If you want to argue that the Chargers maybe should be below Denver or maybe shouldn't be in this group at all, my debate or my rebuttal, I guess, back to you would be, give me the AFC team that belongs in the playoff spot that's over them right now, because the way I see it right now, I'm looking at a 2-3 Jets team in the Jeff Fisher category, and then a bunch of 2-3 and 1-4 teams moving down into the struggle bus and into the number 1 overall group here. So while looking at the Chargers as like the 13th best team in the league is kind of a wild thing to say out loud, remember, we're talking playoff hopefuls here, teams that have a legitimate shot as far as playoffs are concerned, and right now, the Chargers finding their way in, getting healthy, coming off a bye week. Hopefully they get at least one of their 2 tackles who missed the prior game back. This is a team that could be finding itself again. And also on top of that, Justin Herbert had some time to rest that ankle. He's been dealing with, I believe, was the high ankle sprain. So this could be a very different Chargers team coming out of this bye week here. We'll see. It depends on how healthy they are, but I look at them as a playoff hopeful with the current state of the AFC right now. The Seahawks at number 12, 3-2. Starting to feel like a little bit of a suspect team here, and I was this close to actually knocking the Seahawks out and maybe putting the Packers in, but at the last moment, as I stated going into this, I remembered I have to have a division winner for every single team within the playoff hopefuls and the Super Bowl contenders. And the Seahawks right now do lead that NFC West division that is currently very much up in the air. They're sitting at 3-2. You also have a 49ers team that is in a very tough way right now at 2-3. A Cardinals team that I don't think I would put against the Seattle Seahawks right now or over the Seattle Seahawks right now. And then, of course, a Rams team that's down and out near the bottom of the league, in my opinion. The Seahawks are what they are, and that is the best of their division, and that makes them a playoff hopeful. Offense was a mess this past week. I mean, you got 30 yards rushing from your running backs. Geno Smith basically had to do everything for you. Defense is reeling from injuries right now. They are in a really tough way right now. They're still 3-2, albeit their 3 wins are against not so great opponents that are also in pretty tough spots, minus the Denver Broncos, who have found their way over the last 3 weeks here. But when you look at their other 2 victories, not necessarily the most impressive 3-2 team in my opinion. The Steelers at number 11, another team, O-line injuries this time, though, really something that's starting to hurt them. They're having a hard time running the ball effectively. On top of that, Fields seeing pressure on about a third of his dropbacks, despite the fact he only had 27 passing attempts here, but did still feel the pressure. He got sacked, I believe, 3 times, if I'm not mistaken. I forgot to write the number down here, but I believe it was 3 sacks during the game. And then on the defensive side, my takeaway really with Pittsburgh, the struggles on offense, I'm a little bit surprised, but then I'm not, considering the state of the O-line, but also just defensively, there's only so much you can do eventually before you break. And I mean, I've got to give the Steelers defense credit. They held on for as long as they could, but that last drive, the Dallas Cowboys really just finding a way to wear them out and basically chewing up all but 20 seconds of the clock for the final 5 minutes of the game, grinding their way to a finish. It is what it is. You win some, you lose some, but I still think that Pittsburgh, very good team right now, just kind of caught between a rock and a hard place with the injuries to the offensive line, and Justin Fields kind of coming back down from what has been a pretty strong handful of weeks for him. He had, I don't want to say a more Justin Fields type of game here because he was still solid, but a come back down to earth moment, I guess you could say here. And then again, the lack of being able to run the football against a pretty injured defensive front over there in Dallas. Again, kind of surprised that worked its way out, but I guess, maybe the O-line being as banged up as it is giving them problems. I still believe in the Steelers, though. Playoff team right now, in my opinion. That could obviously change down the road, but at 3-2, with what we've seen from them up until this point, you lose a game by 3 following an hour-and-a-half rain delay in a weird situation like that. Game doesn't end until like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm not going to hold it against them too much. Cowboys sitting at 3-2, obviously with the win here, finding their way back into the playoff hopefuls category. Obviously wasn't pretty. Dak Prescott, couple of ugly interceptions. But the big thing that we've been harping on for a while, of course, is that running game. And Rico Dowdle finding some success on the ground against a pretty tough run defense in the Pittsburgh Steelers on top of that. The other thing, like the Steelers missing Alex Highsmith as well, is definitely something I almost forgot to mention there. So Steelers fans, believe me, I get it. But Rico Dowdle, 4.4 yards per attempt, 87 yards on the night here. This is what they've needed. Some sort of balance to their offense so that when clutch time comes, yes, Dak Prescott could potentially win you the game like he did, but it doesn't always have to be all on Dak Prescott. There needs to be some balance to this offense here. And now that Rico Dowdle is showing, maybe he can tote the rock a little bit more and take on a bigger role as like the lead back for this offense here. Keep an eye on him. We'll see what happens there. But I mean, between that, the defense doing a really good job, like I said, kind of bringing Justin Fields back down to earth, especially in that first half, giving him a lot of fits here. You kept the running backs in check. You only allowed about 3.6 yards per attempt on the ground. It was a solid outing, a late outing at that, one that I didn't even finish watching when it was happening. I had to get up the next morning to finish the game because I had been up so early that same day. I was like, forget this. Like, I can't stay up till 1 a.m. So I had to catch the rest of the game later on the next morning on the replay. Shout out to NFL Plus for their replays. But overall, solid performance, and honestly, in a must-win kind of situation to keep yourself in a good spot within your division. Cowboys got it done, so I tip my cap to them there. Bills at 3-2, sitting at number 9. I don't know about Josh Allen being fine after banging his head off the ground. We'll take the Bills' word for it on Josh Allen being cleared to return to play, but you have him huffing smelling salts on the sideline, and I have a really hard time believing that you bang your head like that off the ground the way Josh Allen did, and you're not seeing like 2, maybe 3 football fields when you get up. Like, I don't know. That is what it is. It definitely did not look great optically, but I guess we'll take the Bills' word for it here. Curious to see if the NFL even bothers to look into it at all. But again, I don't know how you walk away from seeing him smack his head off the ground like that and go, oh, yeah, he should be fine. Whatever. Offense, missing Khalil Shakir. You had a nice big play from Keon Coleman in that game there. But overall, just one of those games where between Josh Allen having to get out and who knows how much that actually affected him later on in the matchup here, you got bottled up on the ground, and on top of that, or not bottled up completely, but James Cook was held in relative check to what he has been able to actually do in some of his best games this season is the kind of the best way I can make sense of that there. And on top of that, defensively, you had a really tough time dealing with CJ Stroud. I mean, it's one of those things where CJ Stroud is currently doing what you don't typically get to see from guys his age and so young in the league right now. And, everyone was all about CJ Stroud's coming and everyone knows it now. CJ Stroud's playing on a level that not a lot of guys at his stage in his career are supposed to be playing at. So it is what it is. You're dealing with injuries in the back end of that defense too. So I get it, but tough outing for the Bills. I didn't really think of it as like a must-win situation, but definitely one of those like playoff implication type of games you really wish you could have won. And you let it get ugly early, you battle back late, ultimately you come up short. Hopefully Josh Allen's okay, but not the end of the world. Thankfully, the rest of the division behind you, even if it is close, is still kind of a mess. So, ride that high for what you will. Just keep pushing forward, keep winning games, beat up on the bad opponents you have coming up on your schedule here. Thankfully, you have some games coming up against your division rivals that you'll potentially get the opportunity to beat up on them and widen that gap a little bit here. But it is the Bills' division to lose, sitting at 3-2. Buccaneers at 3-2. You have multiple opportunities to win this football game, but ultimately you have a Bucky Irving fumble that kills a drive. Kirk Cousins throws an interception. Then from there, you find yourself literally like at the doorstep of putting this game away here, and it's like penalty, loss of yards, and then more loss. What did you lose? Like 14 yards, was it, after that Kirk Cousins interception to ultimately put you in a spot where you have to punt the ball away? Like, come on, really? And this is after, your offense scores 24 points on the first 4 drives of the game. Like, they come out swinging. Baker Mayfield has 3 touchdown passes. Rashad White and Bucky Irving combined for 116 yards and 6 yards per attempt on the ground. Just one of those things where defense came at an absolute premium in that game, but your defense came basically hardly at all. And I mean, this is like now the 4th time that Tampa Bay Buccaneers have ever allowed a 500-yard passing game, which is crazy to think about, and that's since 2016. So not a great look for the defense. Hopefully this is a one-off thing for Tampa Bay, but that was a tough loss where you had multiple opportunities to come away with the win and could not get the job done. The Falcons right above them at number 7, 3-2. Drake London's emergence now, and I'm excited because this is someone who I feel like I've believed in since he's gotten into the league, and I've always just been like, if he could just have a legit guy throwing him the football, and finally you have someone like Kirk Cousins who can get him the ball to the tune of 154 yards and a score. Darnell Mooney, yes, drops, but 105 yards and a couple of touchdowns. Big reason why the Falcons were even able to win this game. If he can just clean up the drops, Mooney is money. Drake London is clearly the number one guy that I feel like a lot of people have thought he has been. He's just needed someone good throwing him the football. And then on the defensive side of things, I can't believe the Bengals, and when you see the way that defense looks right now, I cannot believe the Bengals let Jesse Bates walk, because they are missing him so much over there in Cincinnati right now. And he continues to be a playmaker and game changer for the back end of this Falcons defense since he's gotten there. Couple of forced fumbles in this game, obviously. The game-saving one that ultimately he knocked out of Bucky Irving's arms to save the game as they were driving down, as Tampa Bay was driving down the field to put the football game away. This Falcons team is rounding into form, and I think this might have been like the coming out party for them on Thursday night. They helped put together one of the most entertaining Thursday night football games I think I have seen since Amazon at least took over, and one of the more entertaining Thursday night football games I have seen in recent memory, because it feels like at least the last 2 or 3 years, football games on Thursdays have not been good. And so I want to thank the Falcons and also thank the Buccaneers for what was quite the show that we got on Thursday to kick off what was a pretty wild week altogether in week 5. And then, of course, at number 6, those Washington Commanders. Now, listen to me, Commanders fans. I get it. You're 4-1. Jaden Daniels, probably in the conversation for MVP candidate. Forget Offensive Rookie of the Year. The way he has played to this point right now, as he leads the league by 5% in completion rate at 77. He is number 2 in passing yards per attempt right now. The guy is just tearing it up. I get it. It's been awesome to watch, but there are some things that I am a little bit worried about. First and foremost, yes, you're 4-1, but the quality of the wins that you have don't necessarily look that great when you look at the record of the opponents that they have beaten here. But on top of that, you also have to look at what the defense has been doing here. Now, you have 3 games where you've allowed 18 points or less, and it's looked really good. But then you also have a couple of instances with like Arizona and with Tampa Bay and with Cincinnati, where you have 33 plus points allowed in those 2 games. Yes, you've looked good the last couple of weeks, only 27 points combined in the last 2 games you've played, but the defense has been a little bit up and down. And again, when you look at the 5 teams you've played right now, Cleveland, New York Giants, Arizona, Tampa Bay, and Cincinnati, the one loss you have against a Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that a lot of us consider a really good team. I have them 2 places behind them there. It's just, I need another quality win for me to really look at Washington and go, this is a Super Bowl contender. Now, you could maybe say some of the teams that are in front of them, why would they be contenders? Like, look at their wins, blah, blah, blah. There are some, that's a fair conversation to have. But right now, for me, all I need is just like one more big quality win. That's all I'm looking for. And honestly, another win next week, and if it's a definitive one at that, I'm probably fine with just throwing them in. I was this close to having them. I had them when I was doing the rough draft for this. I did have them initially in the Super Bowl contenders, and I talked myself out of it. So I'm like right there. It's not that far off, but I want to see one more good win from Washington before I can really go all in and call them a Super Bowl contender, because I've given a couple of teams now the opportunity to be in that group, and I've regretted it not too long later, like as recently as like just 2 weeks ago. So for right now, I want to try to keep that Super Bowl contender group as legitimate as possible and be a little bit more conservative with who I throw in there. So this close to having them in there, but just give me one more win and I'll really believe. I need another good win with a good defensive performance from Washington before I can really go all in. And then finally, at the very top of the league, the final 5 teams. Sitting at number 5, we're looking at the Baltimore Ravens. At number 4, the Houston Texans. At 3, the Detroit Lions, who obviously did not play this week. The Vikings at number 2, and the Chiefs sitting at number 1, 5-0 for numbers 1 and number 2. But at the top, of course, KC. Now, the Ravens sitting at number 5 at 3-2. Again, record obviously not as good as the Commanders. Why are they above the Commanders? I hear the arguments already. I don't even need to see them. I already can hear them in my head. Listen, you look at what Lamar Jackson does. He is just a bona fide stud. He's a 2-time MVP for a reason. And when you look at what he did in this game here, and I just want to shout out all the Lamar Jackson is a running back people, because I don't know how you can watch him throw for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. And I understand. I just ragged on the Bengals defense earlier. I get it. Bad group here. But you don't just luck your way in to 350 yards passing with 4 passing touchdowns to go with it. You couple that with Derrick Henry, who had 6 yards per attempt. And then when you look at what the defense is doing right now, it's concerning. But what that offense has put together, it is a unit like no other, and they can completely decimate teams on the ground if they need to, but they proved this week that they can also throw the football with the best of them. They have a really tight loss to the Kansas City Chiefs in week number 1. Again, a toenail away from being a team sitting at 4-1 right now, potentially. And then you, of course, just have what was a blown loss, letting a team that should not have come back on you, especially in hindsight now when you see where the Raiders are currently, allowing that 10-point comeback in Baltimore on top of that. Like, this is a Ravens team that should be sitting at, 4-1 at worst, 5-0 if everything broke their way. So, yeah, I'm worried about what they're doing against the pass on defense right now. They're allowing 280 yards per game, which is the second most in the league at this current point here. But I look at Baltimore, and I have a really hard time not having them in this group here. And maybe it's track record, maybe some bias, just because I respect the hell out of what the Ravens do and just how consistently good this team is year in and year out. Maybe that's what it is, but I trust in Baltimore, and I know that they can compete with the best of them week in and week out. And I like them at number 5. I'm sorry, Commanders fans. I know I'm going to get it from somebody. I'm ready for it, but I'm sorry. I believe in Baltimore and what they're doing right now. The Texans sitting at number 4-1, another tight win, but as I've been saying, especially with Houston and with teams like the Vikings as well, who are sitting at number 2, you get into those tight contests, the great teams win, and that's what Houston did here in this matchup here. Nico Collins went down with an injury, and from the sounds of it, he is now going from, rather than being day-to-day, to week-to-week, so hopefully he does not miss too much time, but it does not sound like the injury was good, to say the least. C.J. Stroud, as I mentioned earlier, continues to do his thing, another 300-yard passing game. He had a touchdown, he had an interception, but overall looked really good. The secondary locking up the receivers that they were going up against. Again, Keon Coleman did have that one big play here, but James Cook slowing down in the matchup here. I look at Houston, and they're about as legit as they come. A lot of people were spouting off about the whole everyone sees Houston coming, that what they were playing a last place schedule last year, if I'm not mistaken, because they picked CJ Stroud at number 2 that year's draft, so they must have been last place in the division there. The narrative was there. Sophomore slump for CJ Stroud, last place schedule last year. Everyone knows they're coming, but here they are sitting at 4-1. They're grinding out tough wins, yes, but they're getting those wins nonetheless. And their one loss, albeit an ugly one, was to a team that I have ranked above them. So I like Houston. I like the way they're rocking and rolling right now. The games are a little tight for me, but it makes it fun. It makes it exciting. Lions at 3-1 did not play this week. If you don't think that they're one of the top 5 teams in the NFL, that's really not a conversation I'm trying to have right now. The Vikings sitting at number 2, 5-0. Brian Flores' defense is a championship caliber defense at this point here. The offense, 2 turnovers, put the defense in a couple of bad spots, but they never really flinched. They did a great job taking advantage of the mistakes that Aaron Rodgers was making. That interception that Stephon Gilmore had to seal that game, phenomenal stuff. I will say I am a big fan of having football at 9:30 in the morning when I first get up on a Sunday. It's not something that I'm used to living on the East Coast, but for those of you that do live on the West Coast that wake up at, I believe, so what is it? It's 1 p.m. here, so 12, 11, 10 a.m. you get football, and like pre-games and all that stuff are starting at 9 a.m. Like, you guys got it good on the West Coast, I've got to say. I'm a little bit envious because I do like waking up in the morning at 9:30 in the morning for kickoff on Sunday for football. It's kind of nice. The 15 and a half hours of total football from start to finish was a lot, but it is what it is. But I'm sorry, Vikings fans, more about how great your team is. Best in the NFC. Andrew Van Ginkel, another pick 6. Again, the Steph Gilmore interception to win the game was awesome. I do have a slight concern, though, about the team, and that is just Sam Darnold. And I will continue to maybe not pound the table about this, but I will, just bring it up every single week, because even if your record is perfect, your team can't be perfect. No team is perfect. I feel like we've had a couple of weeks now of not quite the Sam Darnold play we got the first 3 weeks of the season, and are more along the lines of typical Sam Darnold play. Now, I know he did get banged up a little bit in that game here, and maybe that was part of it, but I'm just saying, 14 of 31, interception. He was under some pressure, sacked 4 times. I'm not saying he was seeing ghosts, not saying that by any means, but not a great game for Sam Darnold. And it's overseas. I get it. I said the same thing for Aaron Rodgers too, so same principle applies here for Sam Darnold. But, just keeping an eye on the play of Sam Darnold, because I have yet to really go all in. And if you take the play that he's had the last couple of weeks and you put that play on the Carolina Panthers, they're losing those games. So is this team still winning because of what is surrounding Sam Darnold in spite of what Sam Darnold has done? I don't know, but I think we'll find the answer to that in the coming weeks, and I'm curious to see if I'm right or wrong about my suspicions. And then the Chiefs sitting at number 1, of course, 5-0, getting the job done here on Monday Night Football. Kareem Hunt is a blessing for this Chiefs team. For him to be able to step back in, and it feels like he never missed a beat, and it's right back to what? How long has Kareem Hunt been in the league, and how long has it been since he was in Kansas City? I mean, he came in the league in 2018, 2017, something like that. I think he's been around for a little bit, or not that long ago, maybe like 2019. I forget when it was that exactly he came in. Same year as Patrick Mahomes, if I'm not mistaken. So 2018, 17. Damn, it has been that long. Wow. All right. So Kareem Hunt, been around the block, but he's back in Kansas City, and it's like he's never skipped a beat. Couple that with the fact that Juju Smith-Schuster, of all people, was like the savior as your receiver on this Monday night, You're getting just the most unorthodox and creative version of the Chiefs offense, and it's actually working this year. They're not dealing with the drops and everything that they're having they had last season here. You had like the Kelsey snap that, he threw out to Worthy, who took it for 6. Like, there's a lot going on with this offense to make things happen, especially because they're so thin at wide receiver right now. They were running so many 4 tight end sets. Like, it was craziness. But Andy Reid is the offensive mastermind of the NFL for a reason. This Kansas City Chiefs team is back-to-back Super Bowl winners for a reason. It's because this offense continues to evolve, not even every season, but just every week, it feels like, with the situation that they've been in at times. So hats off to them. The defense continues to look good. They're second in points allowed to only the Los Angeles Chargers, who have played a game less than they have. The Chiefs are doing Chiefs things, and that is winning football games, looking like one of the best teams in the league. I'm not here to have conversations about officiating, because you can look at basically every single football game and point stuff out. It feels like it's just amplified because the Chiefs are always in prime time and everybody hates that the Chiefs are winning right now. So I'm not getting into that conversation. The Chiefs are number one. To be the best, you have to beat the best. And for me, I put the Bills at number one. What was it, like a week or two ago? Stupid decision on my part. The Chiefs are the number one team in the league right now, and I stand on that hill until I see a reason to not stand on that hill. But those are my rankings coming out of week number 5, going into week number 6. Let me know in the comments section down below. Thoughts on my rankings, anything you would like to see changed, all of that, fire away. I love discussing with you all, but that is it for me. As always, if you made it to the end, I greatly appreciate it, and I'll see you all next time. Have a good one.